all started when I came across a post on a forum that I couldn't ignore. You know those moments where something just grabs you, and before you can talk yourself out of it, you're already diving in? That's what happened. It wasn't the first time I had heard of the dark web, of course. There were rumors, legends, warnings, but like most people, I brushed them off as exaggerated stories meant to scare you. The more dangerous the place seemed, the more I felt an itch to understand it. It was during the summer of 2021. Me and my friends were living for the weekends when we'd sit around and talk about the stupidest things. The three of us, Matt, Sarah, and me, were tight. We'd known each other since high school. Matt was the wild one, always into tech and hacking. Sarah was the level-headed one, the voice of reason. And then there was me, somewhere in the middle. It was Matt who first mentioned the dark web. He'd brought it up casually one evening when we were hanging out at his place. He was showing off his new rig, custom built, fast as hell. He told us about the weird corners of the internet where people trafficked in things you'd never even think about. Not just illegal stuff, like drugs or stolen data, but even darker things. Ever wondered what's on the other side? Matt said, grinning like he was in on some secret. He tossed a USB stick onto the table. I've got a few invites to some places. Want to see? I wasn't sure. Neither was Sarah. Isn't that dangerous? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Matt just shrugged. It's all about how you navigate it. If you know what you're doing, you're fine. At first, we laughed it off, but I could tell Matt was serious. His face had this weird, eager look, like he wanted us to understand the allure. So we gave him the benefit of the doubt. One Friday night, Matt came over to my apartment with his laptop, and we started the journey into the unknown. We used a VPN at first, masking our IPs, but then Matt mentioned a Tor browser. It was what allowed you to access the hidden layers of the internet, the parts where things weren't indexed by Google or Bing. Matt was like a kid in a candy store showing us the basics. It wasn't long before we stumbled upon a link that looked strange. The URL was a jumble of random characters and numbers with a few weird symbols thrown in. Matt hesitated for a second, then clicked it. A blank page appeared. It was dark and I could barely make out anything. Then, slowly, words started to form. They were cryptic at first, like a riddle, but the more I read, the more a sick feeling settled in my stomach. Do you want to see the truth? I glanced at Sarah. She was already backing away, shaking her head. But Matt, he was staring at the screen, mesmerized. Truth? What kind of truth? I asked, my voice shaking a little. Before either of us could ask another question, the screen flickered. A new page loaded, this one more sinister. The words were clearer now. Step into the abyss. That was when it happened. The first video appeared. It started out innocuously enough, a grainy black and white shot of a hallway. The camera was shaking. I could tell it was old, the type of footage you'd expect from a cheap security camera. The hallway stretched on forever. It was dimly lit, and I couldn't make out the details. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The figure in the distance moved forward and the camera zoomed in, but it was too grainy to make out a face. Then came the voice. It was faint at first, like someone whispering in your ear from a distance, but it grew louder, clearer. They're watching you, always watching. I shuddered. I looked at Matt, but he wasn't looking at me. He was staring intently at the screen, his face pale. I wanted to ask him if he was okay, but the words caught in my throat. Get out while you still can. The message felt like it was meant for me. I didn't know if it was real or if I was just getting caught up in the atmosphere. But I wasn't alone. Matt was breathing heavily. his fingers twitching on the keys. He was frozen, entranced. Sarah, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. "I'm done," she said. "This isn't funny anymore." We all agreed to log off, but even as we shut down the laptop, that voice, the whisper, seemed to linger. I didn't feel safe. I couldn't shake the image of that hallway and the empty figure moving through it. A few days passed. I tried to forget about it, tried to chalk it up to a weird, unsettling video, but I couldn't. I kept checking in with Matt. Every time I called, there was something off about him. He was distant, almost unnervingly so. Then came the message. It was late one night. I was alone at my apartment, scrolling through my phone when I got an email from an unknown address. "You shouldn't have watched it." The email was just those words. The sender's name was garbled, a random mix of letters and numbers. I tried to shake it off, but I couldn't. The next day, I got a message from Sarah. It was cryptic, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. "Matt's not responding. I think he's in trouble." We both tried reaching him, but he didn't answer his phone. His social media accounts were eerily silent. It was like he vanished. By the time we showed up at his apartment, the place was locked up tight. His laptop was gone. His phone was off. Sarah and I called the police, but they were no help. We didn't know what to tell them. Our friend disappeared after watching something on the dark web. They'd think we were crazy. That night, as I sat at home, trying to piece things together, another email popped up in my inbox. This time, it was an attachment. I opened it. It was another video. The footage was clearer this time. It was a close-up shot of Matt, his face pale, his eyes wide and frantic. He was locked in some kind of room. Concrete walls, no windows. The camera was shaking, but you could make out the fear in his eyes. He was mouthing something. His lips formed a word. "Help." Then the screen went black. The next morning, I woke up to find my phone ringing. It was Sarah. "You won't believe it," she said, her voice trembling. "I got a message from Matt on his own account." My heart dropped. "Meet me at the same place." That's all the message said. When we arrived at Matt's apartment building, we found nothing, no sign of him. But there, on the ground, was his laptop, open, screen cracked, and when I touched it, it powered on, as if nothing had happened. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help myself. On the screen was the same cryptic message from the dark web. "We always find you." I turned to Sarah. She was pale, trembling, but before I could say anything, I heard something faint in the distance, a whisper. "It's not over. I'm not sure how much longer I have before it catches up to me. It's been a few weeks since Matt's disappearance. I've stayed off the dark web, but I know it's still out there, watching, waiting, and I can't shake the feeling that whatever happened to Matt, it's only a matter of time before it finds me too."